I've said it before, I've said it again. Baseball cannot throw its hands up and say, we're not playing because we couldn't figure out the money. Every single human being that's rooting for sports to come back would accept the idea of we're not coming back because we could not figure out how to handle things on the virus front. Even though other teams or other leagues are attempting it or figuring out how to attempt it. Right now, baseball is mired in the good old-fashioned finger-pointing blame game over money that fans, I think, if you had to list the things you liked about sports the least, arguing over money, to use the old Family Feud phrase, that's your number one answer. It definitely would be on the board towards the top. So, on that front, you're hearing that the baseball players received baseball's opening foray of a pitch to them to accept something other than the deal that they made back in March, which was to prorate their salaries based on how many games are played. That was not received well by baseball players. Max Scherzer, who is a Scott Boras client, we'll talk about what reason why I mentioned that in a second. He said that the proposal that was received by the players, quote, no reason to engage with MLB in any further compensation reductions. Again, we have previously negotiated a pay cut in the version of prorated salaries, and there's no justification to accept a second pay cut based on the current information the union has received. I'm glad to hear other players voicing the same viewpoint and believe MLB's economic strategy would completely change if all documentation were to become public information. The old saw of open the books, which brings back a 2011 NFL lockout flashback so bad for me, I almost am going to grow all the hair that I lost during it back. Now, you know how you receive one of those alerts on your phone, right?
Right.
You get an alert on your phone,
Pops
you
up.
open it up, and only the first couple of lines appear on your screen.
Mm-hmm.
So then you open the rest of it up. So I got one yesterday saying, Reds pitcher Trevor Bauer blasts, ...
Oh.
And I was ready to blast Major League Baseball, right?
Right. Tease.
Nope. He blasts Scott Boras. The agent, Scott Boras, he tells him to stay out of union business. The first half of his tweet was very passive-aggressive, saying he's hearing rumors about a certain player agent meddling in Major League Baseball Players Association affairs. If true, and at this point there's only rumors, I have one thing to say, ... Scott Boras, rep your clients however you want to, but keep your damn personal agenda out of union business. So he went very passive-aggressive in the first half of his tweet and then very aggressive with the last 140 characters. Why is he blasting Scott Boras? Well, shortly before we came on the air, the Associated Press, you've heard of them, right?
I have.
They obtained an email that Scott Boras sent to his clients. Now, we had Scott on last week, as everybody heard on this show, youtube.com/Rich Eisen Show, Sirius XM Channel 211, NBCSN. I kept on saying, well, what's the conversation going on right now between the union and the owners? And he kept on not talking about what's going on right now. How many times did he talk about the March agreement, about prorated salaries?
Several times.
Many times, to the point where I basically had to say, well, if you're saying March, baseball's saying May now. Are you saying that what baseball said in March is still operative? Because baseball's saying it's not operative anymore. And that's what he said. I'm not part of the union. Well, the Associated Press obtained this email that Boras sent to his clients telling them, don't budge. Remember, games cannot be played without you, Boras wrote to his clients. Players should not agree to further pay cuts to bail out the owners. Let owners take some of their record revenues and profits from the past several years and pay you the prorated salaries you agreed to accept, or let them borrow against the asset values they created from the use of those profits players generated. And what he is basically saying is the reason why owners would lose money on this year isn't because of the revenues lost because there are no fans. He's saying it would not allow them to make nearly as much money to pay the debt off that they were allowed by MLB to take on. The owner's current problem is a result of the money they borrowed when they purchased their franchises, renovated their stadiums, or developed land around their ballparks. This type of financing is allowed and encouraged by MLB because it has resulted in significant franchise valuations. Owners now want players to take additional pay cuts to help them pay these loans. They want a bailout, says Scott Boras. Cue Trevor Bauer's tweet. Cue more of the fingers and the pointing and the recriminations. And I will say
Not connecting.
I will say this again. Figure it out. Figure it out. Because emails being obtained, leaked, or obtained. I'm sorry, just something got in me.
Yeah.
Or owners making an opening foray that they feel was in good faith negotiating, which is in the language of the contract that they did make back, or a deal that they made back in March, as Jeff Passan, ESPN senior baseball insider, told us in our first hour of our program that you can check out on our YouTube stream. He called it repulsive because he knew that players would have that sense. We don't want to know. Here's what baseball should do, because I like suggesting. I don't just like blasting for clicks. Here's what baseball should do. They must have because Jeff Passan mentioned they want spring training open by June 10th, right? They must have some form of a schedule that they've put together, right? At least the owners and the players agree to what the NHL has done, and now the Premier League has done, and what we're expecting the NBA to do, and what the NFL's already done. Put out a schedule. Put out a schedule. Let us look at this schedule, and sure, we'll look at it and say, how possible is this? Because they can't figure out the money. But at least we'll start talking about baseball. Yankees, Mets, opening things up. Yankees, Red Sox, opening things up. Agree to that. Do that. Let us in the media and fandom chew on this while you figure it out, because you can't throw your hands up and say, we couldn't figure out the money. That is a non-starter. And for any owners out there who might be taking in this show thinking that we'll get through it, I'm not losing that much money for 2020. Well, you better start thinking about 2021, because a vaccine's going to hit at some point, and we're all going to want to start watching sports again at some point. And my kids are going to want to say, let's go to a game at some point. And if you don't play because you couldn't figure out the money, and we watched every other sport open up, guess who's not coming? Guess who won't forget? I don't think that's a threat. I think I'm talking brass tacks of what fans are thinking.
That's real. People
who call 844-204-RICH every day. We had a guy last hour call from the state of Michigan. He said he took a 20% pay cut from General Motors to keep his job that's going to be deferred, paid back in one lump sum with interest. And he said, I don't have a date by which I'm going to get that paid back, but I know it's coming my way, and maybe players could do that. That's a fan. So let's get it together. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.